Welcome back to Dr. Frankenbike's laboratory. Today we're looking specially at cantilever brakes. These are the three bikes we're going to upgrade, three early 90s super bikes from 1994, 93 and 92 respectively. If you subscribe to this channel, you'll be familiar with all three of these builds because they're ones that I've built for myself quite recently. This is the S-Works from 1994, which has most recently been restored. This is the Dave Quinn I actually had in 1993, and this is the 1992 Dyna titanium Ogre. Now, today we're talking about the brakes, so let's look at the before. On the Ogre, we've got dia-compe SS7 brake levers paired with these rather cool 987 cantilevers and the Onza chill pills, which are definitely staying because they're color matched and very rare. Now, the problem that I complained about when I built this bike was that these, whilst original and the lightest cantilevers in their day that you could buy, unfortunately a lot of the black coating has come off and they're looking a bit scruffy. So something needs to be done about this. Next, the before on the Dave Quinn is this set of LXV brakes. Now, I've complained about these before. They are brilliant brakes. There is no question that they are functionally and aesthetically brilliant. However, this bike should have, as nature intended, full Dior XT on it at the very least. That's what it used to have, and putting LX anything on it is a downgrade. Also, V-brakes on a 1993 bike, when they weren't invented until 96, has also raised one or two eyebrows. So this is getting put back to how it ought to be. And finally, this S-Works has currently got a set of very beautiful XT cantilevers, which I love, but bit by bit my plan is to restore this to as much M900, which is the original XTR, as possible. So that's the before. Now for the grand unboxing. Let's see what kind of upgrades we're talking about. First of all, we're going to start with, I believe these are M733. These are XT brake levers. Clearly never been used. They're in perfect condition. I believe these are from the early to mid 90s. So all will become clear about where these are going to end up. Next, got a package here from Hungary. Now, the moral to this story is, if you buy anything XTR off eBay and it seems too cheap to be true, it usually is. Now, to be fair, these are original M900 XTR cantilevers and they are complete. However, the reason why they were cheap is three things. First of all, the original XTR brake shoes have long gone and they're almost impossible to find. So these are just they are Shimano, but they're certainly standard ones that have been replaced. Secondly, the XTR logo, that all-important XTR logo, has been polished off, so these aren't new, they've obviously been cleaned up. Thirdly, underneath this tape that holds everything together, the original bolts, which I think were titanium, have long gone and been replaced by some standard, what looks like stainless steel that's seen better days. So whilst they are XTR M900 cantis, and I have got a full set, they were cheap clearly for those three reasons. But I'm not going to complain because, like I said, a full set of new old stock M900 cantis with bolts and XTRM system brake blocks would cost more than some bikes. So let's not worry too much. Now, the jewel in the crown. This is something truly special. If you think XTR is something to aspire to, wait till you see this. This arrived today from another supplier. Now, originally, the Dave Quinn, the red bike from 1993, had XC Pro on it, Suntour XC Pro, which was at the time Shimano's arch rival Suntour. It was their top-end group set, which many would argue is even nicer than XTR in terms of finish and lightweight. Very, very beautiful, but obviously Shimano dominated the market and Suntour faded into non-existence and now makes cheap forks, if indeed it is still the same company. But back in the day, Suntour XC Pro was even a cut above XTR in some people's minds. Now, don't ask me how I could afford it in 1993. There must have been a deal on or something. But I actually did have originally on that bike XC Pro brake levers. I couldn't afford the whole set, but I had the levers. I'm pleased to say I've still got them. If any of you ever comes to a business meeting with me, you will see in my boardroom at my company there is a bike on the middle floor and it is the orange and yellow Raleigh that I restored last year, and that has now got my old original XC Pro brake levers on, which are still working perfectly and beautiful. So, not wanting to disturb those, I went looking for some others to go on the Quinny. And look what I found. Champagne gold finish. Now this is such a limited edition that I had no idea it ever even existed. So when I saw this on eBay, I couldn't believe my eyes. Not only has it never been used, but also it's a full set with front and rear cantis. So that red bike is going to get upgraded to something that it has never seen before. These are not the Scott Pedersen patented self-energizing cantilevers that XC Pro was famous for, and actually weirdly those are quite plentifully available and fairly cheap. I don't know quite why there's such a surfeit of them available online. These are the originals that don't have that self-energizing, which was never particularly effective anyway, but they have got that all-important XC Pro etching and that beautiful champagne gold finish. So that's going to look amazing. What's also really amazing about this set is that it came complete with these very cool XC Pro yokes and these kind of braided non-stretch straddle wires, which are just slightly thicker than the Shimano equivalents, and even a Suntour XC Pro setup spanner and some instructions for how to use it. I'm pretty sure if you saw my Dynatech video a few videos ago, the setup of these, I think these were actually manufactured under license by dia-compe. So the dia-compe 987s that are currently on the Dynatech Titanium, I think the setup will be very similar to these, but we will find out. So here are the patients in the operating theatre waiting for their transplants. First of all, this lovely restored XT canti on the S-Works is going to be preserved for history. It's going to be replaced on the S-Works by the XTR that has just arrived. The XT is then going to go and live on this Dynatech Ogre Titanium. As I discussed, this the 987 is actually a lighter brake and is functionally wonderful, but because it's so scruffy and all this black coating's come off, I'm going to take it away, restore it separately, and then bank it for a future build. Also, there is method in my madness. The XT cantis plus those M733 XT levers, when they go on this Ogre, will bring it ever so slightly closer to the top of the range titanium Dynatech, which I said in the video had full XT on it. This one had DX on it. So putting a little bit more XT on it to go with these shifters is just gradually upgrading it to make it a little bit more fancy. So that just leaves the Dave Quinn, which, as I've said, certainly deserves better than V brakes, especially asymmetrical LX ones. So these are going to be banked for another build. They're perfectly fine. They're good brakes. They're just not nice enough for this bike. This bike gets the XC Pro as nature intended. So let's start the transplants. Right, here's yet another tip from my never-ending stash of everyday household items. Bamboo kebab skewer is the best way of getting these lovely vintage grips off your handlebar without having to damage them. All you do is use the point, which obviously is wood, so it's not going to do any damage to your bar or to your grip. Prod it in as much as you dare, and then get the straw of your WD-40 and poke that in, and just give it a squirt. And I know it seems counterintuitive, like you're lubing the inside of a grip that ultimately you want to be sticky, but WD-40 can be cleaned off, and then if you reapply hairspray when you're sticking the grip back on, it'll be just as well stuck down as before. Oh. Right, that took about 15 minutes, 2 kebab skewers, 2 WD-40 skewers, and a lot of sweat. These things are not designed to come off once they're stuck down. So there we go, an immaculate set of LXV brakes in great condition. Problem is, they're not the correct period for this beautiful bike, so they don't belong on it. They're not old enough to be particularly nostalgic or of retro interest, and they're not modern enough to compete with the hydraulic discs on the newer bikes. So into the box they go until I can think of a use for them. Another tip when you're installing brake levers is don't torque up the clamp too hard, because if you do have a crash and you take an impact to the lever, you don't want to take off the whole end of the bar. You'd rather the clamp of the lever just swiveled round and round. Right, well, here's an observation that is next level nerdy, but hear me out because it's actually quite significant. One of the biggest problems with cantilever brakes and V-brakes was juddering and squealing. It's quite fiddly to set them up so this doesn't happen. It's called towing in. It basically means that the toe, i.e. the leading edge of the brake block hits the rim a nanosecond before the heel does, so that there's no sort of juddering at this end. Now, Suntour, and the only other manufacturer I've ever seen that does this is Coolstop, have put these two really tiny little pips on the heel edge of the brake block so that when you're setting up a new brake, it's automatically towed in. Now, the reason why I comment on this is that it bends my head that not every manufacturer was doing this. Coolstop did it with a sort of lip. Suntour are doing it here with these two pips, which must have cost, I can't imagine it cost anything extra to manufacture. And I'm sure the design isn't patented. So I just don't understand why the market leader, Shimano, never bothered doing it. Anyway, sorry about that, very nerdy aside, but certainly you will find that when these things are set up and running, they will be silent, they won't judder or squeal, thanks to these two tiny little pips. There it is. This is what an expertly set up Gold XC Pro cantilever brake set looks like. Did it give me backache? Yes, it did. Did it take me ages? Yes, it did. I can see exactly why my student self switched to V-brakes in the 90s. You can just bolt them on and ride. But in the pursuit of true beauty, we must endure great pain. Bye-bye SS7, hello XT. And my hundreds of daughters have arrived, and here's the grand reveal. From 1992, the Dyna Ogre Titanium, which now has full XT brakes. From 93, slightly creeping up in spec, we've got the Dave Quinn 653, which now has Suntour XC Pro in gold. And from 94, the S-Works Prestige, which is gradually creeping up to a full XTR spec bit by bit, which basically brings all of these three just ever so slightly closer to retro bike perfection. So in conclusion, cantilever brakes are rubbish. They're nowhere near as powerful as V's or discs, but they're also beautiful, and there's nothing more satisfying than that synchronized clack when you've got them set up perfectly.